Hi Photos subscribers. Today we're going to be talking about some of the fascinating history behind photography and how the innovations from film were translated into digital. So join me today as we talk about the innovations which were actually precipitated from the 1921 Nobel Prize winner Albert Einstein. Last time we looked into the innovation of George E. Smith and Dr. Willard Boyle and how they designed and innovated the use of a CCD, a charged coupled device, as something which could be used as bubble memory, and how it led to the CCD being used as one of multiple pieces to create an imaging sensor. So let's look at today how this, as it's called the accidental chip, the CCD, called the accidental chip, became something which is today used as technology. The principles, parts, and pieces of that is now designed and being improved on in digital photography today with Canon and Nikon and so many other companies innovating and improving and taking the technology to the next level. As we ourselves take our skill level with photography and digital imaging to the next level, this is kind of a history of how leveling up occurred and something by which we can use to measure our technique and skill, and I believe use this to expedite and use our growth to grow exponentially, seeing how the leveling up of history has led to the next variation of an art form into something much more scientific. So in the 1960s, we talked a little bit about the engineer George E. Smith and his supervisor Dr. Willard Boyle, and how they designed all that and how they were using the theory that Albert Einstein talked about, the photoelectric effect. He was a 1921, Albert Einstein was a 1921 Nobel Prize winner. And so in 1970, George E. Smith and Dr. Willard Boyle drew the plans and the theory, the technical write-up of a CCD they published, and in 1970 was being talked about quite a lot in the engineering parts of the world and the companies that were involved in that. Well, in 1973, a man named Stephen Sasson graduated from RPI, which is Rensselaer Polytech, or Rensselaer, excuse me, I don't mean to run that together, Rensselaer Polytech Institute. And as he got out, he was hired, as he graduated, it sounds like he was in prison. As he graduated from RPI, he was hired into Kodak, and he was working in one of their divisions. He talked with his boss, his supervisor. He worked in the research laboratory of the apparatus division. So Mr. Sasson was discussing with his boss about these CCDs, and his boss said, well, why don't you see if you can use this in capturing image, since it comes obviously from Einstein's photoelectric effect, and these two engineers, Dr. Boyle and Mr. Smith, innovated the ability of being able to use it. Let's see what we can do in Kodak to see how this applies to imaging. So he did. He played around with it for a while. Mr. Smith and Mr. Boyle, I believe, had a lot more direct effect doing this toward imaging, but it was quite a lot more effort and research and study and technical failures that led to the digital cameras that we have today by Mr. Sasson, using these CCDs that he coupled together, and then having had to have an array of diode information storage with these CCDs. Once basically the light sensor he created with the CCDs, he had to have some way to store that information, and the array that he created was his memory card for us, and then he used the ability to project that information that was stored in the array of diodes to a monitor. Now, one of the first images that Mr. Sasson captured was of his son, but he was trying to figure out how this could be something that would be more consumer based, something that wasn't so commercial required and something so heavy to carry around that people would actually want to use these devices. And so it was one of the things that precipitated to the flooding of a consumer market, the digital camera, which isn't replacing film, but it is much more readily available. So the product output in a sense is cheaper just by production cost, and in the use of it, then the value of those photos comes from the value put into it by the artist, you and me, the photographer. So as we've studied, it's been interesting to see where the theories came from and how we found out the photoelectric effect from Albert Einstein has been the very core of this theory and idea of how the industry has turned from film into a digital use. But then the other key players that were innovating different parts of circuits and technology to be able to be used in digital photography with Mr. Smith and Dr. Boyle, and then in the early 70s, the CCD technology was picked up by Kodak, and the young engineer at the time, Mr. Steven Sasson, and as one piece at a time, driven towards something new and innovative, which is given us the opportunity to make a living with these camera devices that are now as cheap as they are, but also the quality that they've been made, and the companies have been competing with each other to make them better and smaller, but also somewhat more affordable. We're going to get into some details of how it really came into the consumer market and what it looked like originally, even as recently as the 1990s. So thank you so much for watching. If this history in the innovation of photography from film to digital has piqued your interest, we would love your subscription. But if you have just stumbled across our channel and this information is interesting to you and you want to let us know, leave a comment down below. If this video has added the content of this video has added value to your photography, we would also appreciate a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.